If you're over 60, let me ask you something gently. Does your night break in the same place? Somewhere between 1 and 3 in the morning? You're asleep, and then suddenly you're not. Your heart feels a little too quick. Your mind's suddenly bright. The room hasn't changed, but your body won't sink back into rest. Many seniors come to me thinking this is insomnia, but it isn't. It's a signal problem. The hormones, circulation, and gut rhythms that once guided your sleep begin misfiring with age, like a clock that still ticks but no longer keeps the right time. And what most people try: pills, melatonin, warm teas. They soothe the mind for a moment, but they rarely touch the root of why the night keeps opening. I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed, a physician in geriatric medicine and muscle physiology. Tonight, I want to show you something different, something simple, familiar, and often overlooked: tomato. Not as a salad, not raw, but used in 4 specific nighttime methods that help calm inflammation, steady cortisol, and restore your natural sleep signals. Stay with me, and if this speaks to you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Method number 1 is the strongest, and it may be the key to sleeping through the night again. Number 4, tomato warm tonic. Most people think of tomato as something for salads or sauces, but when you warm it, dilute it, and let it settle in the stomach, tomato becomes one of the simplest tools for calming the body before bed. Not because it makes you sleepy, but because it softens the places where nighttime tension silently begins. As we age, one of the first systems to lose its rhythm is the digestive tract. The gut grows more sensitive, the stomach empties more slowly, and the nerves surrounding it stay active long after dinner. That activity travels upward, tightening the diaphragm, lifting heart rate, and sending soft signals of alertness to the brain. You don't feel it as pain. You feel it as a night that won't quiet down. A warm tomato tonic interrupts that cycle. When tomato is blended or strained into warm water, its acids soften, its fibers become gentle, and its natural compounds begin working almost immediately. The warmth relaxes the smooth muscles of the gut. The diluted tomato delivers light pectin and polyphenols that soothe irritation instead of triggering it, and the combination of heat plus mild acidity encourages the stomach to release tension. A key step for older adults, because relaxation in the gut often precedes relaxation in the mind. There's also a serotonin link. Tomatoes contain precursors that help support serotonin production in the gut, and serotonin is what the brain later converts into melatonin. It's not a sedative effect, it's a signal effect, a gentle reminder to the gut-brain axis that the day is ending. Warm liquids themselves lower sympathetic tone, the fight-or-flight state many seniors unknowingly stay in for hours after dinner. A warm tomato tonic is especially effective because it adds circulation support. The warmth promotes peripheral blood flow, while the tomato compounds calm inflammation in the stomach lining. When the nervous system detects both warmth and ease, cortisol naturally begins to settle. This is why so many older adults tell me they don't fall asleep after this tonic. They slide into sleep quietly, steadily, without trying. Years ago, during an evening clinic, I watched an older gentleman, a retired gardener, follow his own version of this ritual. He struggled with light sleep for years. Instead of teas or pills, he simmered a small pot of diluted tomato water every night while washing his tools. He didn't rush. He didn't measure. He simply warmed, strained, and sipped. Over the next month, the change wasn't dramatic. It was progressive. He told me his nights stopped breaking so early. He didn't wake startled. His chest felt looser. His mornings no longer carried the heaviness of unfinished rest. What he practiced was not a recipe, but a rhythm. To prepare the tonic, keep it simple: a small spoon of tomato puree or a few slices of ripe tomato in a cup of warm water. Simmer lightly, strain if needed, and sip slowly about 60 to 90 minutes before bed. No spices, no oils, no salt. Anything stimulating disrupts the purpose. This is not a meal, it is a signal, and that's why this method belongs at number 4. It is gentle, foundational, and easy for the body to understand. It softens the system. It opens the door. because once the gut quiets, the body listens. And the next method goes deeper, helping the nerves and inflammation that keep older adults awake far past their bedtime. Number 3, tomato plus olive oil sleep shot. When sleep becomes fragile after 60, inflammation is rarely loud. It doesn't appear as pain or fever. It appears as restlessness, as a heartbeat that won't slow, as a mind that stays too bright even when you're exhausted. And one of the most reliable ways to settle that hidden inflammation is through a simple combination: tomato and olive oil. This is not a cooking ingredient, not a salad dressing. It's a sleep shot, a small, warm mixture designed to deliver lycopene in its most absorbable form, because lycopene, the red pigment inside tomatoes, only reaches its full anti-inflammatory strength when paired with healthy fat. And olive oil is the cleanest carrier for older adults. Here's why it matters. When inflammation rises, the brain stays alert. The vagus nerve stays active. Cortisol pulses through the night in small, steady waves that interrupt deep sleep cycles. You don't wake fully, but you drift between light stages, never reaching the deep, restorative phase the body needs. The tomato plus olive oil sleep shot interrupts that cycle on 3 levels. First, it opens blood vessels gently. Warmth plus fat-soluble lycopene increases nitric oxide activity, allowing blood to flow more smoothly. This matters because deep sleep requires stable oxygen delivery. Anything that disrupts circulation disrupts rest. Second, it calms the brain's microinflammation. Lycopene crosses the blood-brain barrier and reduces the small inflammatory signals that interfere with melatonin receptors. With less inflammation, melatonin binds more effectively. The sleep signal becomes clearer, cleaner, stronger. Third, it softens nighttime heart rate. Olive oil contains natural polyphenols that support heart rhythm, helping it downshift into evening mode. For many seniors, this single shift, a slower, steadier pulse, is what allows the body to finally surrender to sleep. I once observed this effect in a woman in her early 70s who struggled with sudden nighttime awakenings. Not from nightmares, not from pain, but from a jolt, a brief inner alarm, as if her body forgot it was allowed to rest. She didn't want medication, she wanted rhythm. We introduced a small warm tomato olive oil mixture 1 hour before bed. Just a few tablespoons, nothing more. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern changed. The jolts softened. Her breathing steadied. Her nights grew quieter with fewer interruptions and far fewer episodes of waking to a racing heart. It wasn't dramatic, it was steady, gentle restoration. To make the sleep shot, combine a spoon of warm tomato puree with half a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil. Blend with warm water until smooth. Sip slowly, not as food but as a cue, a signal to the nervous system that inflammation is lowering and the night is beginning. The goal isn't fullness, the goal is absorption, allowing lycopene and polyphenols to work at a time when the body is most receptive to them. Even a small amount can shift the chemistry of the evening, especially when taken consistently. And that consistency is why this method sits at number 3. It's stronger than the warm tonic. It works deeper, especially on the nerves and vessels that carry the weight of nighttime restlessness. But it's still gentle, still safe, still something the body understands without force. Because once inflammation softens, the brain hears the night differently. Signals become clearer, melatonin works smarter, and the stage is set for something even stronger. A method that carries natural melatonin far above anything tomatoes provide fresh. That's where we go next. Number 2, sun-dried tomato. The natural melatonin source older adults never think about. Most people know tomatoes are healthy. Very few realize what happens when you remove their water and let the sun concentrate their inner chemistry. Sun-dried tomatoes are not just a richer version of the fresh fruit. They are a different physiological tool entirely, especially for sleep. When tomatoes dry naturally, their melatonin content increases anywhere from 5 to 10 times compared to fresh tomatoes. Melatonin is the hormone that tells the brain, the night has arrived. After 60, production of this hormone drops by more than half. That's why so many older adults fall asleep lightly, drift in and out, and wake at hours when the body should be in its deepest phase. Sun-dried tomatoes offer a direct answer to that gap, not by forcing the brain to sleep, but by giving it back the signals it no longer makes efficiently on its own. They also contain higher levels of potassium, a mineral essential for lowering nighttime heart rate and relaxing the smooth muscles around blood vessels. When potassium rises gently, the heart doesn't fight the night, it settles into it. And relaxation at the level of the vessels often precedes relaxation at the level of the mind. Another advantage, sun-dried tomatoes are low in carbohydrates. This matters more than most people realize. Late evening sugar spikes, even small ones, can disrupt insulin, trigger cortisol rebound, and break the night between 1 and 3 a.m. Sun-dried tomatoes deliver melatonin and minerals without creating that metabolic ripple. They communicate calm without stirring the system. I once cared for a retired school teacher who struggled with maintaining sleep. She could fall asleep easily enough, but she rarely stayed asleep longer than 2 hours. Her nights were a series of interruptions, each one leaving her more fatigued than the last. Pills made her groggy. Teas helped, but never for long. We introduced a very simple ritual: 3 small pieces of sun-dried tomato 45 minutes before bed, followed by warm water. Not as a snack, but as a message. Over the next 10 days, her sleep consolidated. One night she slept 5 hours straight, something she hadn't experienced in years. Her body wasn't drugged, it was guided. Why do sun-dried tomatoes work so well for continuity sleep? Because they address 2 vulnerable systems simultaneously: melatonin signaling and cardiac relaxation. When the brain receives a stronger melatonin pulse and the heart eases its pace, deep sleep becomes more accessible and easier to sustain. To use them correctly, choose sun-dried tomatoes without added vinegar, salt, or heavy oils. Those additions interfere with the nighttime effect. Just 2 or 3 small pieces, softened briefly in warm water, are enough. Eat them slowly. Let their warmth spread from the gut upward. This is not food. This is instruction. And this is why this method sits at number 2. It's more direct than the sleep shot, more targeted than the warm tonic, and particularly powerful for those who wake multiple times a night. It strengthens the body's natural sleep depth, the kind of depth that protects you from those early morning awakenings that age makes so common. But there is one method even stronger. One combination that not only supports melatonin, not only softens inflammation, but addresses the root cause for most older adults who wake at 2 or 3 a.m., the nighttime cortisol spike. That's the final step, the heart of the countdown. Number 1, tomato plus honey night mix. The ritual that calms the 2 to 3 a.m. cortisol spike. This final method is the strongest because it speaks directly to the single most common reason older adults wake in the middle of the night: the cortisol rise between 2 and 3 a.m. At that hour, the body briefly checks for safety, a small test of blood sugar, circulation, and stress response. If the system is calm, the test is quiet. If the system is unstable, cortisol rises, and the night breaks. Tomato and honey used together at the right time offer one of the simplest ways to guide that moment back into balance. Tomato brings the anti-inflammatory support your brain needs. Honey brings the metabolic stability your nervous system depends on. Together, they create a steadying effect that older adults often haven't felt in years. Not sedation, not heaviness, but continuity. A night that stays closed. Here's why this combination is so powerful. As we age, evening cortisol doesn't always fall the way it should. For many seniors, it stays a little too high before bed, then dips too sharply after midnight. That drop triggers a rebound, or a protective rise, and the brain responds by waking the body, not fully, but enough to break sleep, enough to keep you staring into the dark, feeling too awake to rest, but too tired to begin the day. Honey interrupts that drop, just a small amount, a teaspoon, keeps blood sugar stable enough to prevent that cortisol rebound. It doesn't spike glucose, it cushions it. It gives the brain reassurance that energy is available and that there is no need to initiate an alarm. Older adults often underestimate how sensitive the nighttime brain becomes. Even a tiny metabolic disruption can feel like danger. and cortisol always follows danger. Tomato supports the other half of the equation. Its natural anti-inflammatory compounds lower the background tension around the vagus nerve, the nerve that regulates heart rate and communicates safety to the brain. When inflammation softens, the nerve sends a calmer signal upward. The heart slows, breathing deepens, melatonin binds more effectively, and the body stays asleep instead of checking the environment for threats. Together, tomato plus honey address both triggers, the metabolic drop and the inflammatory alertness that sit beneath most nighttime awakenings. I once cared for a retired nurse who experienced the same pattern for close to a decade. Asleep by 10, awake by 2, unable to drift back no matter how quiet the night. She had tried every supplement available over the counter. Some made her drowsy, some made her groggy, none kept her asleep. What she needed wasn't sedation, it was continuity. We introduced the tomato honey night mix as a short ritual, not as a treatment. Warm water, a spoon of strained tomato, and a small ribbon of honey stirred in 30 minutes before bed. She didn't notice much during the first few nights, but by the end of the first week, something shifted. Her 2 a.m. awakening softened. Then it disappeared. Her mornings felt lighter, her pulse steadier, her mind less fogged. It wasn't dramatic. It was a slow remembering. Her body reclaiming a rhythm it once knew. To prepare the mix, keep it pure. A small spoon of warm tomato puree, or strained juice, blended into a half cup of warm water. Add only a teaspoon of honey, sip slowly, not as food but as instruction. A message to the body that energy is stable, inflammation is softening, and there is no need to rise before morning. This method sits at number 1 because it restores the very thing most older adults lose: the continuity of sleep, the ability to move through the night without fragmentation. It doesn't push you into sleep. It holds you there. When the body feels fed, warmed, and reassured, cortisol no longer surges through the early morning hours. The night closes gently, and for many seniors, that's the first step towards sleeping deeply again. Naturally, safely, consistently. Now that you've seen each method, from the gentle warmth of the tonic, to the anti-inflammatory sleep shot, to the concentrated melatonin of sun-dried tomato, and finally the continuity power of tomato and honey, the question becomes simple. Why do these work so consistently for older adults? The answer lies in 3 biological systems that quietly weaken after 60. When these systems drift, sleep fragments. When you support them, sleep returns. The first system is melatonin signaling. After 60, the pineal gland produces far less melatonin than it once did, sometimes 50 to 70% less. And melatonin isn't just the sleep hormone, it's the conductor of the entire night rhythm. It tells the brain when darkness has begun, stabilizes the transition into rest, and keeps the body asleep long enough for deep repair. Fresh tomatoes support serotonin, the precursor to melatonin, and sun-dried tomatoes carry actual melatonin in higher concentration. For older adults, these gentle inputs help the brain rebuild a signal it no longer produces reliably. Not a drug, not a force, just restoration. The second system is inflammation control. Most people over 60 live with low-grade inflammation. Not painful, not dramatic, but constant. Tiny inflammatory molecules circulate through the bloodstream and interfere with melatonin receptors, vagus nerve signaling, and deep sleep cycles. When inflammation is high, the brain stays alert, the heart rate remains slightly elevated, and the night becomes light and fragile. Lycopene, especially when carried by olive oil, lowers these inflammatory signals. It settles the nervous system without sedation and protects the pathways melatonin depends on. This is why the sleep shot can feel almost like a softening from within. It's not making you tired. It's creating the conditions where tiredness can finally be felt. The third system is the gut-brain axis. Nearly 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in the intestines. When digestion is tense, inflamed, or slow, something very common after 60, serotonin production falters. And without serotonin, melatonin cannot rise. Tomato, when warmed and diluted, calms the gut with gentle pectin and polyphenols. Honey stabilizes nighttime glucose, preventing cortisol spikes that originate from metabolic stress. Together, they tell the gut, you're safe, you can quiet down now. And when the gut rests, the brain follows. These three systems, melatonin rhythm, inflammation control, and gut-brain signaling, do not fail abruptly. They fade gradually like the dimming of a lantern. That's why so many older adults say, I don't know what happened. Sleep just slipped away. It slipped because the signals dimmed, and these tomato-based methods brighten those signals again without overwhelming the system. There's also a deeper principle at work, something I've seen in clinics around the world. Warmth teaches the body time. Warm water, warm circulation, warm digestion. These are signals the nervous system understands even when hormones grow weaker. Tomato integrates naturally with that warmth, carrying compounds that the older body absorbs easily and responds to gently. That is why these methods work. Not because tomato is magical, but because it supports the exact biological systems that age slowly erodes. And now that the why is clear, we can turn to the how, the practical, simple steps that help you use each method safely and effectively in your own evening rhythm. Now that you understand why these methods work, let's bring them into a simple rhythm you can practice tonight. Gentle steps that guide the body instead of overwhelming it. If you choose the warm tomato tonic, sip it slowly about 60 to 90 minutes before bed. Its purpose is to quiet the gut and soften the nervous system. It's the best place to begin if your body feels tense in the evening or digestion feels heavy. If you prefer the tomato and olive oil sleep shot, take it about an hour before bedtime. Just a small amount is enough. It works best for those who struggle with restlessness, where the mind won't dim and the heart won't settle. For deeper sleep, the sun-dried tomato method fits well about 45 minutes before bed. Let the pieces soften in warm water, eat them slowly, and allow their natural melatonin to rise through the system. And when continuity is the problem, waking at 2 or 3 in the morning, night after night, the tomato and honey night mix works best taken 30 minutes before lights out. It helps the body maintain steady energy so cortisol doesn't surge in the dark. Choose only one method per night. Let your body learn the rhythm without confusion. If you have reflux, use warm or sun-dried versions rather than raw tomato. And if you live with kidney disease, monitor potassium intake carefully. As you try these methods, pay attention to the quiet changes. A slower pulse, easier breathing, a night that stays closed longer than before. These are signs your rhythm is returning. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear which method you'll try first. Leave a comment, tap like, and subscribe so more older adults can find their way back to deeper rest, because your body remembers how to sleep. You just have to remind it.